Okay, well, first of all, I just want to start by saying that thank you all. Thank each and every one of you guys for taking the time to just come on here with me and just basically talk some mead. I think we're going to have a really good time just sharing stories, answering some questions, and imbibing in some deliciousness. So one of the first things that I think we should do is open a mead. I mean, first of all. So I kind of would like to start with this Dragon Nectar one. So let's give that a try. So Justin, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Justin Schoendorf. I'm one of the founders of Monk's Meadery. I'm the owner and mead maker, and based out of Georgia. So our current production facility is in Athens. I operate out of a brewery called Southern Brewing Company, and soon to have a tasting room in Atlanta proper. And so what we're trying here, this is a partnership between us and the local convention that goes on every year. They've been around for 30 years or more. And after a little chasing, we partnered with them to create Dragon's Nectar. And it's been a great hit, right? So the event went virtual, and this was a way for us to kind of get something alcoholic out to fans all across the country. So it was actually a great little thing that we did. Passion fruit. Hey, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Passion fruit, hibiscus, and dragon fruit.
It's great.
Delicious.
I love it. Nice little tartness to it.
Very drinkable, nice balance of all the flavors. You get a little bit of each of the components in there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I basically went from making 5 gallons to making 1,000. So I was a little nervous in how efficiencies were going to work doing it, but we had one shot and we got it. It's been great.
Do you find when you're making something new, I mean, do you go with lower quantities of fruit or spices and then kind of build your way up, or you just throw down what you think and see, and it is what it is?
I'd go for it. Clearly, right, like once it's done, you can make some tweaks if you need to. This, we didn't have to make any tweaks. So I felt like it was a home run right out of the gate. And then, the passion fruit helps take down the acidity. Hibiscus adds a tartness to it, and then the CO2 was like the seal, right? Like before it was carbonated, it just didn't seem like it worked, and then the little CO2 adds enough acidity that I think it's super drinkable, light, and a lot of fun.
Well carbonated.
Yeah,
It's light, but it's got a good body to it.
great body to it.
And I agree with that whole thought process of the CO2. I find with session meads in general, CO2 kind of helps it out a little bit. It does create a little flavor, a little dance on the tongue, a little more body type of thing. So I'm not surprised we found that any number of times where something uncarbonated, certainly sometimes it's better suddenly with some CO2 added into it.
Yeah, no doubt.
When we build them up, ours run a little sweet, not all. It was our market likes it a little fruity sweet, but when we're tasting it out of the tank, I always think, okay, CO2, carbonic acid is going to get a little drier and kind of tame it a little bit, balance the sweetness. So this, it's like, like that Pepsi that loses all its fizz.
Yeah.
It's sweet it's already sweet as hell, but it gets sweeter. Nice job.
Yeah, I would agree. But well, good taste in mead.
Hey, thank you.
Right.
And so you said that this is kind of more or less like a little bit of a limited run for right now?
So yeah, I think and again, I'll be meeting with the DragonCon folks tomorrow or have a Zoom with them. But I think we'll keep the product the same, and then the package will change every year. So it'll be just a release every summer. I think the formula can stay the same, and then the package changes. I think the product itself was so good that I don't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel every year.
As you shouldn't, yeah.
It's a keeper.
Yep.
It's definitely good.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Right on. And we've got 2 other monks meads here as well.
Oh, we're gonna do all my stuff first?
Well, I mean, I figured we would go driest to sweetest. And I mean, you really do have like the driest meads out of everything here, to be honest with you.
So I go last, right? So no like penalty points if I get a little slurs of speech or anything.
That's to be expected later on. That's the mead doing its job.
Right.
So I think the next thing to try is Stigmata. This is 4 different flowers. It's hibiscus is the main one, rose petal, elderflower, a very, very minute amount of hops, but I needed that 4th flower. And then I actually use a Savannah Bee lavender honey, so it's kind of like a bonus 5th flower, if you will, as the back sweetening honey on this. But the residual sugar on this is super low.
And like, I noticed the clarity on this versus the dragon nectar. So, I mean, is this one filtered? The dragon nectar is unfiltered?
So no, the dragon nectar just has a lot of passion fruit juice. So that juice is what really made it cloudy. And then this is filtered.
Beautiful. I love the color on it.
The color and the nose are really delightful.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one's the second iteration of Stigmata. I mean, I really love what you did by bumping up the ABV. Really bolsters the body of it. Definitely gives you a lot more flavor.
What is the ABV?
The ABV on this is 9. When I first did it, I made it at 5, and I wanted it to be a session mead where you could drink a lot, and I actually had done it in cans. And then I moved away from cans and took the ABV up to 9, and it seems like, there's just so much more structure to it with that higher alcohol content. All the flavors are much more pronounced. And so this is what we've been doing for roughly a year and a half. I've been really pleased with the way it's turning out. And finally, I think the market is catching on to what it is, and we're starting to see a little bit of sales with it. I don't think I did myself any favors naming it Stigmata. If I called it like fruit roll up, I think it would have been better. But, all my names have a little, not all of them, but don't necessarily make it easy.
Like a rosé.
You could have named it rosé all day. Yeah. I mean, I always tell people, if you like rosé, just try the Stigmata, and like it'll almost always sell for sure.
Yeah, way cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Nope, looks like we lost my other camera.
Multiple cameras, huh?
Fancy.
Nice.
I had to find some use for a really old phone, and it's just it works as like a web camera.
So Justin, on that last one, I've done some stuff with the elderflower.
Yeah.
And I'm actually, short story, it's kind of humorous, is I went out with my wife and picked it a couple summers ago, we're going to get the elderflower barefoot, hippie kids out and pick this elderflower. So I made it, and I wasn't getting any elderflower that I was looking for, that nice aroma. Turns out I needed European. American elderflower just doesn't have it.
Yeah.
That's why it's really big in Europe and in the UK.
Yep.
So I planted some.
Oh, and how's it growing?
It's really good over the septic field. I like the water.
Nice.
I think that should be a trade secret, man. I don't
Mental
know if
note, don't drink the elderflower mead.
I used to have an aloe plant that grew well. It turned out that my cat was shitting in it all the time. So
Nice.
That was the secret.
Gotta get that nitrogen.
We are going to edit parts of this, right?
Oh, yes, of course. Don't worry.
We found hibiscus is one for us that we have gotten hibiscus before, and you get it in and it's just pale and like lowly looking, and it just looks like shake, you know, like it's old, and you get minimal color in part, any kind of a color from it. And then we finally found a vendor in Cleveland, and you get these dried hibiscus flowers that are just absolutely beautiful, rich purple, where you drop them in and it just immediately bleeds out into the mead, you know what I mean? And so it's crazy, you know, just from a supplier standpoint, you know, you always wonder, do you not know what you don't know because you don't, you know what I mean? You're using this guy, you know, and you think that's great, but what else is there that you don't know about, you know?
It's one of the big things that I love so much about mead is just the endless variations that there are. And I mean, you guys just constantly prove it. You know, all the innovation that's consistently coming out. It's amazing. It really is.
I think that's one of the things. Oh, go ahead.
No, David, take it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, you know, and I don't know how much you all came from like a home brewing background. I certainly started as a home brewer back in the late 80s, but, you know, when I first started, there were no homebrew shops yet. You know, the Charlie Papazian's book was a pamphlet of how to homebrew, and there was this old timer here in town who sold homebrewing supplies out of the back of his house, and Colonel John always had this answer. It's like, well, you know, it all depends what you like. You know, I was trying to learn back then, so first it was beer, then later mead. But I was like, Colonel, I'm going to make an English brown ale. What kind of hops could I use? And the Colonel was always like, well, it all depends what you like. You can use anything you want to use. And at the time, it was frustrating advice because I was trying to learn. But as I went further and further homebrewing, and then certainly commercial, the further along I find myself answering, especially homebrewers asking questions, is, you know, it all just depends what you like. You can try anything, especially as a homebrewer. I mean, you can do it as a commercial, as you know, you all certainly demonstrate it, just kind of going for something. But, you know, the one thing I always warn homebrewers is the weirder the idea, the smaller the batch you should make to start. But, you know, but it does come back to, and I think that's the innovation that's going on in our industry is you can do anything you want to do. It just depends what you like.
Yeah, Honey pretty much agrees with everything.
I didn't go to the same, your homebrewer wasn't in Atlanta, because I think the guy that we went to basically told me the exact same advice. He was like, what kind of yeast should I use for this? And he was like, well, depends what you like. And it's amazing, but I think it's great advice. And for me, my whole, like I started off brewing beer. There was a chapter on mead, got into it. And what I liked about it is that you can go in so many different directions. So I do not have a tasting room, so I don't have the luxury of having small batches and then being able to kind of taste people on them. Everything that I do goes into distribution, and I was the first meadery in the state, and so at the time I was told that I could never have a tasting room. So I kind of came up with a plan. I wasn't prepared to leave the state in order to start a meadery. So maybe it's because I'm not smart, but I said I'm going to go forward. So I only actually have 6 products that are sold commercially. There's a lot of stuff that I'm making in small batch that I'm trying with friends, but I don't have a way to truly monetize those very well. And what I want to do with what my small lineup is show like the versatility in mead. So everything that I make is going to be kind of totally different. And I like dry things. So everything that I do is for sure classified as dry with, you know, in the Mead Makers Association guidelines. And so, you know, the 2 things that we've tried for sure are dry. And then the next thing that I have a little bit sweeter, this is the next thing is Abstinence in the Abbey. I think it's super witty. It's a play off of, it's a Belgian yeast variety that I use in this. And what are we abstaining from? We're abstaining from grain. We're abstaining from gluten. We're abstaining from beer. And right, as mead makers, we're abstaining from the norm. So modeled after a Belgian beer. In putting this together, I met with a bunch of different beer critics just to see what they thought about what, you know, the direction and where this was. So think Belgian triple. One of my favorite beers is Victory Golden Monkey. And I looked at a lot of clone recipes before kind of putting this thing together.
Because my eyes are not good enough to read the print on the label there. So is there any malt in this or not?
Absolutely not. This is 100%.
Got a
You
rich
could actually
color.
get some malty appeal to it.
Yeah.
So
Isn't it like you said it was like you added like fava bean or something to add like a plant protein or
yeah, so this is maybe the most technical mead I make. Partly in knowing that it was a panel of mead makers, I thought this would be kind of fun to share. So there's Aquafaba, and so if you don't know what Aquafaba is, it is effectively chickpea bean water, and it's used in vegetarian cooking as a thickening agent. And so it's used in lieu of egg whites. If you want to make a meringue or something, if you were vegan, that would be a thing that you would do. So I make a boatload of chickpea bean water. So I bring in a couple 100 pounds of chickpeas. We soak them for a day. The next day we put them in and we cook them. And so the beans cook for 3, 4, 5 hours. And then the day after that, I actually dump the honey into the vat where the chickpeas are, where there's a false bottom. And then we push water through all of that honey, and it pulls all of the proteins and everything that you can extract from the chickpea besides like the solids is what then goes into our fermentation tank. And
Nice.
and when I did this, I did a whole series of chickpea and then variations with no chickpea and putting this thing forward, and then did blind taste tests with all my friends that are in breweries around the state. And every single one, every tasting blind, always picked the chickpea one. And what it was that the hops were more pronounced, the flavors were stronger, and what we believe, or my belief, is that the proteins provide something for those flavonoids to like latch onto, and it made an all-around better product. So it's an extra 3 days in production, and my byproduct is like 25 gallons of chickpeas. So everybody at the brewery like goes home, and I mean, we give them to the guys that pick up the grain for the cows, but we have a lot of chickpeas after we make this. So
Justin, that's awesome. Have you noticed, when you were doing your trials of chickpea versus no chickpea, does it impart a flavor or an aroma, or is it like neutral?
It's pretty neutral, right? Like, you know, if you were to open up a can of chickpeas right now, you smell it and there's definitely an aroma to it.
Yeah.
So much else going on, and then that's all pre-fermentation too. So I think it blows out some of that stuff during fermentation.
I've heard of bananas for body in wines, but I've never heard of chickpeas. That's fantastic.
Seems like it adds body to it. You know, it's a little more mouthfeel.
Yeah.
and it keeps ahead too, you know.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
That's the thing that we always struggle with, is like body and lighter, lower ABV meads is like getting that body, and head retention is, you know, obviously always there, but for a 6.3% mead with that kind of body, I mean, that's great.
This should actually be 10%. What you have, I think.
I was about to say, I get more than 6% out of this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like is that an old label?
Does your label say 6.3?
Yeah.
6.3. Yeah.
It's funny, mine says 10.
Huh.
We got the old
Truth
stuff.
and labeling issues.
Hey,
Uh-oh.
I'm a little embarrassed. Maybe
okay.
I'm drinking a little too much of the 10%, and I don't know how that happened. Again, one of my first drafts with that, we did it lower ABV, and then I've ramped that up. But I didn't know that I had any 6.3 anywhere, and I sent that to you. Maybe that was something that I didn't mean to send. So sorry.
Hey, no, it's all good. I think it's good that it's 6% for right now, because we're gonna be drinking all this other stuff.
Right.
But man, it is great. Thank you so much for sending these out.
Very unique, very creative. You know, the chickpea water, it's incredible.
It does sound like a hell of a brewing cycle.
Right.
It's unique for sure. All right, well, let's dive into some questions here. So let's see. We've got a bunch right here. So what has been the biggest business challenge in running a commercial meadery? And
That I don't actually sell meat or mead.
Yes, very, very valid. We get that all the time. People are like, meat tasting? It's like, no, it's mead. You'll see. Come and learn. Get a mead education. Anybody else major challenges?
I would say, I mean, honestly, I mean, on that to the exact thing, I mean, you know, I always, you know, challenges are opportunities, right? But the biggest challenge is, you know, and you guys have all been at this. David, you've been at this a lot longer than us, and we've been at this for 8 years. And, you know, the challenge has been awareness and educating and what mead is, and people just don't know what it is. But at the same time, that challenge is the biggest opportunity. From my point of view, and if you have the opportunity to educate somebody and give them an experience that they've never had, then that's an awesome thing. So yeah, I think the biggest challenge for us has just been awareness. And I mean, you know, meat, I mean, every single one of us has heard that, you know, you guys sell meat, or you know, it's going to be sweet, or, you know, all the preconceived notions that there are about mead. And it's overcoming those is the opportunity, you know, and that's what I think has been the funnest thing, is changing perspectives, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I'll add a little bit to that, and that is, right, like all of my marketing is two-pronged. The first part of that marketing is what is mead, and then once I've established that they know what mead is, then I can tell them a little bit about what Monk's Meadery is and what is different. And so it's 2 layers of education that, you know, a brewery doesn't have to go through, or a winery doesn't have to go through. So it just makes it a little bit harder. I completely underestimated that when I set to go forward, and it's humbling.
Well, and that's the reason that, you know, when we go to a beer festival, and I'm sure that you guys can all attest to this as well. You go to a beer festival and the mead table has a line, you know, across the way, and because everybody knows what an IPA is. I mean, maybe there's maybe it's got tropical hops in it, or, you know, whatever, cryo, I don't know, you know what I mean? But like, you know, when it comes to mead, there's a story, and there's something to be explained, and so you get a line, and it's, you know, while it's the biggest challenge, it's also the biggest opportunity. And it's been crazy to see, you know, just in the past, I don't know, 4 years, 5 years plus, like the, you know, awareness of the category, and people were starting to, now I say people were starting to, I mean, it's still like, beep, you know what I mean? But I think it's, you know, people were starting to get there. People were more aware than they were. Most people are more familiar, you know?
Right, and I think that's right, exactly. I mean, 20 years ago, nobody knew what the hell you were talking about. 20 years later, I think like 14 people know what I'm talking about.
Right.
When I start the conversation.
Right.
Kirk, how long have you been at it? I know roughly the age of the other companies, but how long has St. Ambrose been
We
going?
got our license in 2010, but I've been a beekeeper for 40 years, and our main source of income is pollination, like California almonds, Michigan tree fruit, our honey that we make in Florida and Michigan. But I started making mead in the back room. You know, most of it was bad. We'd have parties and kids, you know, have some good smoke and drink and make mead. It was in steel honey barrels at first, and it's terrible container. You get oxidized. But then I finally got plastic containers from a winery, plastic like 250-gallon tanks, and then I started controlling but it was still, you know how it is. You really need a chiller to make good mead. So So anyhow, I made some really good ones. It was a mistake. We had, it was a barrel of honey we put raspberry in for a cream honey spread we still make, a raspberry cream honey spread, and I use freeze-dried fruit. Well, you got to add point so-and-so water, and my guy put an extra, moved the decimal, and put 10 times too much water in it, so I had this raspberry cream honey that it was liquidy. I couldn't dehydrate it. I waited a month. So Sharon said, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with this honey. She goes, make mead. So that's when I went to the winery and got a giant tank and made some good raspberry. And everybody said, hey, why don't you start making this? So it was kind of on a whim. I started making it. I used the corner of our office, and it took over by 2012. It's like they kicked me out, and the guy next door offered me 10 acres. You know what I mean? He said, hey, Kirk, I want you to have this. I looked in, I go, yeah, it's a good idea. You know, so we built it, and we built it up pretty good size for a commercial production. And the tasting room was way too small. I mean, we got by, but this year we got a big expansion going in with a full kitchen, Ansel hood, fryers, cookers, everything upstairs with a balcony around where people can listen to music, because we're all about music, like 4 nights a week. I play. So we've got a killer open mic. It's like a cultural center. So it's, and we were talking earlier, David, I didn't realize most of our income in the mead would come in the front door. I thought distributors, and it's like, no, people are coming to us, and it's like insane. It's so good. So, and the margin's better. So it was.
Margin's always good if you can get them on retail and such.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But we
I've been to your place.
we're at it 20 years now, and it definitely has been a very changing marketplace. I mean, I always referred to mead, still do to a certain extent when I'm doing my pitch out in the market. It's the oldest beverage no one's ever heard of. It's not what you think it is. Whether you've had mead and it's really sweet, or you just think it is because it's honey. And I think that's still the challenges. I think the base challenges from 20 years ago are still a lot of the same challenges today, though I think in many respects it's gotten a little easier because more and more companies get in business, more local providers. You got boots on the street, people talking very similar about what we do, and then having our own uniqueness to our own companies. And I think that's one of the big benefits in the business, is that as a general rule, most meaderies are roughly talking the same storyline while making it unique to their story. And just like the craft breweries in the 90s, help and push that rock up the hill together as a group.
Yeah. Story is important. People like a story. So
I make stuff up all the time. So.
Yeah, right. Perfect.
The great thing about a story is it doesn't really have to be true.
So David, you're one of the early, like the pioneers, 20 years now.
David's OG. He's the chairman of the Mead for sure.
Yeah, just dumb enough to get into the business 20 years ago, I think is how I usually refer to myself as the fool who started the place.
A man before his time. All right, on. So let's see, one more question. What is really the biggest, number one advancement in the meat industry in the past 15 years that y'all would say is probably the most profound?
Good marketing.
That's what I would say.
Educated.
Marketing.
I would say, for me, my experience is draft mead. And I tell people, say, what is mead like? And I say, well, there's different styles. There's like a still wine. There's our favorite, our best received mead is beer-like, is what I tell them. It's beer-like, but it's not beer. It's made with a honey-based beverage, and it can be a little drier, a little sweeter. And then it's getting traction. We're finding the reps, and some of the reps, if we can get a rep on our side and they like what we make, they'll push it better. And then we're getting we're doing better with our reps. And it's building those relationships, so they'll rep you. And we got to do the sale, basically. It's like these distributors, you all know this. You got to get out and shake the bushes because they just want to deliver it.
Well, it's not the same, right? Distribution game is not the same world it was 5, 7, certainly 10 and 12 and 14 years ago.
Well, and it's
and even, we're big about building the relationships too, but that's gotten harder just because the game has changed and the reps are younger and, are, harder, to build that, that friend, business friendship.
It's a moving target with the distribution over the past few years. I mean, it's gotten, it's just changed completely, like relationships and things like that. Depending on the distributor you're working with, relationships may matter, they may not. It's more about volume and things like that, and it's gotten tougher to find those good partners. I mean, I joke, but I mean, I think marketing. I think if you look at the evolution of it, I mean, marketing, but with quality, and that was, I think, if you look at the evolution of the industry and the category, I always say there's two different kinds of companies out there, right? And I think this speaks to mead or anything, right? There's those that are really good at marketing, and then there's others that are really good at making a good product and having a high quality product. You can make the best quality product under the sun, but if you can't do this, it's tough. If you have a really good marketing platform, you can go for a while, but if you don't have the quality to back it, it's tough, right? And I think over the past, 20, however long, the evolution, the curve of the industry, you're seeing people out there that can do both. And that's where I think we've started to see good growth with the industry and being able to educate people and people paying attention, is that you've got really good quality meads being produced and they're being brought to market in a really good way. And I think that's been a huge thing since I've gotten into this. I mean, in the short time that we've been in it, I mean, you've seen, it's came a long ways. I'll just say that, I mean, it's came a long ways. It's good. It's exciting.
Some of the early Mazer Cups I went to in David's neighborhood. And when we got into some of the still meads, the traditional, the dries especially, I would say, I mean, I didn't want to sound arrogant at the time, but I was talking to someone else, Pete or somebody, and I said, I just did this tasting and 6 or 7 out of 10 were oxidized. This is like maybe 8 years ago. And they're pretty sad. And I think the quality is better, and that helps us all. So, I mean, sometimes it's, you make your mead in this, we share as a group some of the things that make a quality mead. So all the meads are a little better, and then people, sometimes they'll try a oxidized mead or something, and they say, I don't like mead. So it's like, if the whole industry is getting better all the time.
And I agree. I think one of our hardest things always is, if someone tries mead for the first time and it's not good, and not subjectively not good, it's objectively not good, people do think, I don't like mead. And I always try to say, well, maybe you just not had a mead you like. There's a difference between those two things. And I agree, the overall quality in the category is getting better. So slowly but surely that hurdle comes down a little bit. But absolutely, you deal with people all the time. I had a mead once, I don't like mead.
Yeah.
And it's just like, well, have you ever had a cracker you didn't like, or a beer, or a piece of fish? I mean, did you stop eating fish? That type of thing. And you have to kind of be in the challenging front when people don't want to try your mead. You quickly suss out, well, what about it? Is it going to be too sweet? That's always my first question when I ask and someone turns out. Worried it's going to be too sweet? Yeah, well, most people tell me my product's not as sweet as they thought it was going to be. And I think we have to be forward thinking to figure out what is the objection to trying it. Because I tell people, I'm like, look, I made it. Well, I used to make it. I haven't made it in a long time, but nonetheless, but I try to say, like, hey, it's my product. If you don't like it, you won't insult me if you want me to dump it out. Yeah. But I'd rather have you try it and see what happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's have another tape while we're talking.
All I was going to say was, what I think we're all saying is that the bar's been raised, and it comes from the product level and it comes from the package level. And I think, like today, the thing that I think has changed so much in this industry is that it is to get good packaging, right? Like you can get wrap cans, you can do all these crazy things that you know, one of the first labelers we dealt with it was a glue thing, and every one of our labels was slightly askew. And now, relatively inexpensively, like, you can get a pretty decent labeler where they go on more or less straight. And, you know, I think the bar is raised from a quality of the product and what it needs to look like. It used to be cute if your label was a little crooked, but today, like, that's frowned upon.
Yeah. I remember that early on, and it kind of helped us sell the mead. We're like, yeah, it was so good that they were drinking it while they're labeling, so you can tell how much they've been drinking as how skewed the label is.
Yeah, really, really horribly packaged product.
Oh man, it's part of the charm though, and the humble beginnings. Right on. Awesome. Well, let's open another mead. Let's move on to David. So David, which one should we drink first of yours?
Let's do the blood orange nectar. We'll start with the lower alcohol meads and such.
Nice.
All right.
Like.
Woo! The song of my people. Love the
So
cobalt blue.
This is a brand new product for us. We just have had it out about a month. It was supposed to be the spring-summer release for this year, but you know, because we get a sulfite waiver from TTB, and the TTB labs were closed through March and April and May. This kind of got hung up in the waiting for getting the label approval because of that. And it was great because TTB's theory was, well, you know, you have to wait for our lab to open, as you all remember, certainly Kirk and probably Kent, you remember, used to not have to use a TTB lab. You could use just any accredited one. And finally, after, I don't know, sometime in June, we contacted TTB going, hey, is your lab still closed? And they're like, yeah. Like, well, you know, how about we work with, you know, the lab we used to work with, and finally TTB is like, okay, that'll work. I'm like, isn't that the same suggestion I made to you all in March? Type of thing to get the sulfite waiver. But the blood orange, it's, you know, all of our nectars, as a general of them, not always, are the same base recipe. And that's just the fruit or the hops or the spices or whatever else we do with it. So we find the blood orange gets, you know, just a delightful, crisp citrus finish to it. Very, very summery, even though I think we'll sell this some in the winter.
Yeah, it's nice.
I like it. It's refreshing. Nice, again, like crispness to it.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the things we try to do with our products is, and everybody has their own philosophy. So, you know, we don't think ours is right and someone else's is not if they're not following. But our basic theory has always been we're looking for balance in all of our products. We want the honey to be there. We want the fruit to be there. There's spices. We want that. If the oak. And that's always been kind of one of our, you know, beacons of how we like to present our products is everything's in balance and everything is represented.
I think you do it well.
Yeah, that's great.
I actually really like the carbonation on this, like tiny little bubbles, and I felt like it's more carbonated than I remembered your stuff coming.
And our carbonated products, depending on which ones, will have a little more carbonation or a little less, depending on the product. Like our Sizer, we go a little lower carbonation just because we think it fits the, you know, the flavor profiles. But this even got me to pour a little bit more. I've drunk very little of this. So it's like, hey, wow, that's really good.
Have you guys noticed when carbonating, because that was a huge learning curve for us, you know, I've had experiences where I feel like the sweeter we have a mead, the harder it is to get it to take carbonation, or the longer it takes for it to take carbonation. Or, you know, the certain ingredients like banana, with starches that are in banana, I feel like you get a different type of like micro bubbles compared to big bubbles. You know what I mean? It's or the length of time. You know, carbonation's such a thing, you know, weird thing. And we've kind of fiddled our way through it. But have you guys ran into anything like that?
We have not bumped into that, but because we're using the same base recipe, and so we don't necessarily have a much sweeter. And when we have done some variations on the nectar, we've tended to go drier. So okay. I've not bumped into that, but I think that might also be circumstantial because we've not gone that way. Our early days were great, you know, before we had a Zomnagel, carbonation was based on walking into the office with one other person who worked here, being like, "Hey, man, what do you think? Is that carbonated enough? Maybe a little bit more." That was getting carbonation in the early days. Like, how's that taste?
Right.
I had to hire someone who knew how to run a Zomnagel. So we got one after the first head mead maker who actually was a professional brewer after me.
I don't know that it takes any more time for us to carb one product over the other. I think our stuff carbs faster than the beer typically. Like when we go to get to whatever, the guys in the brewery are so used to carving beer, we almost always overshoot it. But what I will tell you is, like, I notice a big difference in what we lose, right? So when we're filling abstinence in the Abbey, I lose way more product in foam than I do on any of my other stuff. And
Which
so
is the bean, the garbanzo bean.
yeah, we're back to the chickpea stuff. So
That bean juice.
but that's the only place I see it. I don't necessarily see a difference in, how do I get to 2.5 CO atmospheres or whatever.
That's one thing with breweries that I've talked to. A lot of times the breweries are starting with more they have CO2 in solution already from the ferment, and they're not starting nearly as flat as we are. Now we degas, we'll diffuse nitrogen through our meads to completely try to degas it as much as possible before we add fining agents, just so that we don't have any issues with fining agents like hanging in suspension because of the CO2 in there. So we start with a really flat product, but a lot of the breweries we've talked to say, they'll start with, one volume of CO2 already in the beer because they just rip it right out of the fermenter and it's got residual CO2. But, we typically, I've got a batch carbonating back there, and I think it's all in, it's about 8 to 12 hours, I think. And there's so many different techniques, and that's what's wild is, crack the head pressure and let it blow through, or, this and that, and everybody's got their technique. It's interesting.
How many pounds are you running on your tank, bright tank?
I have no idea. I don't do any of that stuff anymore.
But
we're doing forced CO2, and so, but we're carbonating within, a handful of hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours with forced CO2. I'd have to ask somebody who's actually doing these things anymore. I didn't use the Zomnagel, so you can't even ask me things like that.
I think the tanks are set up at 15 pounds with a blow off, and we tighten the spring in ours to get 20.
Right, and ours is the same thing. The pressure release tends to go at 15, though with some rubber bands you can go a little.
It goes a little faster.
A little finagling. Well, here let's tackle one of these historical questions. So, how was the use of mead discovered through archaeology? Anybody want to tackle that?
Here comes the stories.
Oh, I think we lost Ken.
You didn't like that question, I guess.
yeah.
He's like, I'm out of here. History class, no way.
He's in the back room Googling it up.
So whatever answer we make up, let's all stick together, because when he comes in with through him, we're going to go with whatever we come up with.
Yes. Well, just from what I've found out, I think like the oldest actual chemical traces of mead found they actually date back to like 7,000 BC, and it was from like a Neolithic village of Jiahu in the Henan province of China, which obviously wasn't China 7,000 BC, but they had chemical traces of honey, rice, and other compounds associated with the process of fermentation. Granted, of course, there's other things in there like rice, things like that. But I mean, I always believe that it's hard to pinpoint who first came up with mead. I mean, this is literally the oldest of all fermented beverage, predates pre-recorded history. This is back when human beings were, hunter-gatherers. And so we weren't writing down everything that we did back in the day. We didn't have Google to track us through our phones or anything. So
You could have been the chickpea farmers.
could have been.
Little known fact, the chickpea farmers have always been big in making mead.
Yes.
Right.
The story I've heard, and I buy it, is that mead predates agriculture. So this is when we, whatever, prehistoric man, right? Like wants something that's sweet, like we're conditioned to want sugar. And so they knew they could smash open a hive, they could get to honey, and then it's not far-fetched to think that it rained and then wild yeast fermented it and then somebody got a little buzz. And so that makes sense to me. Most of the alcohol that we consume, comes from a surplus in a grain or a produce that we're growing. And once you have enough that you can survive on enough potatoes, then you can ferment that to make vodka, And so it's been a luxury item in that regard. But I think mead, because it comes from honey, and that's naturally occurring sugar, it kind of makes sense that it is the oldest in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the storyline we generally go along the magic bag theory of hunters and gatherers traveling around with the water supply in an animal bladder. They come upon honey in nature, it's sweet, it'll make the water taste better, starts naturally fermenting, and same kind of thing. It's like, well, that kind of makes basic sense to me. Whether there's any truth to it, who knows? I've always thought of the oldest reference as being 12 to 14,000 years old. A cave drawing in what is, I think, either now Belgium or Spain. Guy up a ladder gathering honey out of a beehive. A couple at the bottom of the ladder, since mead's known as an aphrodisiac, enjoying the post-mead celebrations and those types of things. And that's generally the storyline we go with. I mean, as we say, no one was there, so no one really knows. But I do think of mead as starting simultaneously in many parts of the world, because honey was indigenous to many parts of the world. And so I never think of mead as it started here and went out to other places and got exported. I think of it as starting, being in Ethiopia, being in what is now Eastern Europe, being in other parts of the world, and roughly kind of starting all at the same time. You doing a little housekeeping there?
No. I think Justin did.
I hope Kent comes back. I want to know what was all up with that saw in the background, so I hope we don't miss out on that.
I think that's to open some of the bottles later on after we've had a couple.
At least wax covered one.
What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to keep like a little catalog of what we've been consuming, because this is going to get a little wild, I think.
But I think Kent's computer blue screen. He says he's jumping back in when he can. Gotta love technology. All right.
Hey, we're gonna do the tequila barrel.
Tequila barrel we'll go for next.
All right.
So this is our traditional mead. So we have three distinct product lines. We're going to taste one out of each today. The Nectars in the purple labels, 8% alcohol and carbonated. The yellow labels are the mountain honey wines, all 12% alcohol, non-carbonated. And then eventually we'll get to the reserve series. But this is our traditional mead, so our standard traditional mead. And we've been doing a lot more barrel aging projects over the years. So we almost always have a barrel aged version of our traditional. This time it's a tequila barrel, which is the second time we've done that. We've done some bourbon barrel versions. We're actually just finished bottling up a single malt barrel aged version. But I love the tequila notes in this. You get the honeys, you get the tequilas, you get
the nose.
A little bit of a drier finish because of the tannins introduced through the oak.
Man.
Yeah, that nose is phenomenal. Oh man.
It sure says tequila.
Yeah, I get that agave.
Right. No, I tell customers all the time, if you like tequila, you're gonna like it. If you don't like tequila, you're not gonna like it.
I definitely love some tequila, so I'm looking forward to this one.
But yeah, we've been having more and more fun trying to get some barrel aged stuff. We always, as I said, we always try to keep a traditional version going. We also, like right now, have a rum barrel aged mango going in bottles. That's a lot of fun. First time we've done that combination. So, we just see what interesting barrels are at the barrel broker. We've actually started working with a Colorado distiller called Deer Hammer, where we're doing the barrel trade, where they send us something like we did a corn whiskey, apple nectar, and then after we dumped it, we returned the barrels to them, and they put more product in it. So having that fun, they send us spirits barrels and we send them mead barrels back.
This has some really interesting, like a roasty with a little bit of fruity finish after that tequila, that initial tequila impression.
Hey, Kenneth, welcome back.
He's back.
Hey, we're hanging
Cheers.
out.
Your meads were great. Too bad you didn't get a chance to talk about it.
The Russians did not like when you asked what sort of pressures are you running on your tank, Kirk. The Russians just blue screened me and it just shut down. So,
Gone.
All right, so we're on to the tequila barrel, Kent.
all right, awesome.
What I like is that the tequila, it really it highlights, I think, the honey notes in here. So the
I would
honey
agree.
tequila, like I never actually thought about drinking tequila and thinking that it tastes like honey, but now I feel like I'm seeing how the two meld. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I think it plays not only with the barrel aging, but one of the things we've done a lot promoting, I'm sure you're all doing these things as well, is, you know, we think of our products as being great by themselves, but they play well with others. You know, we encourage cocktailing with them. We encourage blending with beer, mead Moses for Sunday morning. I mean, we think mead is, you know, a wonderful beverage in and of itself, but it has so many layers and dynamics that you can do a lot of other things with it. So we definitely have worked with cocktails using numerous other spirits with our products.
Yeah, this one, it really evolves on the palate. You know, you get that tequila impression, and then at mid-palate, it starts mellowing, and you get some like fruity notes, but to me, it's a long finish. It just keeps on giving at the end.
Yeah.
Thank you.
David, did you happen to have eyeballs on those tequila barrels, what they look like when you guys used them?
I mean, like most barrels, things come in different conditions depending when we get them. Sometimes we get some barrels like you got to soak them a little bit to get them to, you know, or wax them up because like, wow, that's leaking a lot out the bottom.
The rum barrel, we've gotten rum barrels before, and I think, I don't know if it's the aging process or how often they were reused, but they just look like complete shit. Like they were, I mean, they were salvageable and they worked. We used a lot of barrel wax on them and stuff, but you get some of these spirit barrels that are used in some of these other, like, you know, Latin America, Central American countries, and they're used for so long before they release them to the, you know, the secondary market. You get them and you're like, whoa, okay.
Right, we're lucky because we mostly work with the barrel broker when we're not working with this one distillery. We have a barrel broker in Denver.
Got it.
So even though we order them ahead of time, we physically have eyes on them before they're loading in the van.
Yeah.
But we've taken, you know, we've wound up with some barrels, same thing, like, oh, crap. Especially since you figure it out once the mead's in. So you're in scramble drill.
Yeah. That's great.
But yeah, I love this mead. I think there's just, you know, wonderful flavor profiles. Because right, I agree. Tequila and honey, definitely the flavors meld together nicely.
Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying seeing all the barrel aged stuff coming out of Redstone right now. So I think we're about to have a couple picked up by, I think, like Boulder and Gatlinburg. Like you've got a barrel aged, what is it, the black raspberry also?
Yeah, the black raspberry nectar we have aged off in bourbon barrels. So I think that's going to go into Boulder, and we're talking about that going down to Gatlinburg. The single malt traditional kegs is Boulder only. They had special ordered 4 of those. So we don't usually do a lot of kegging of the yellow label barrel aged stuff. But oddly enough, for you, we do what we can.
Appreciate it. Right on.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Let's see what we got here. So does any of y'all do double and triple fermentations of your meads?
We're strictly single fermentation.
Strictly single? Okay. So I had a question on that.
Well, we actually do. In a sense, we start with a fermentation on the Black Madonna, and then we move on to a yeast fermentation. But Otherwise, if it's yeast, it's just yeast and it runs its course.
All right. Let's see. I love that we're talking about this, the barrels and stuff, because kind of makes me want to like bring out this bad boy. See, I'm sure you all got little. You all got a package from me, right?
Oh yeah.
So
I had this on a biscuit, Kenneth.
Oh, you did?
Oh man, it was a great buttermilk biscuit. We were camping and I took this along, and it was awesome. This is good stuff. It's got heat to it, a lot of heat.
It does, and that was only after we diluted it down with like an additional drum and a half of Tupelo.
Yeah, that was fun. I got a good laugh when I saw that. Like, oh yeah, and then we added another drum and a half of honey to it.
Yeah, when we were emptying this barrel out, like it was, I don't know, it was like we gutted a barrel. Like the redness that came out of this thing was just like, whoa. And then just when it filled the room, we actually needed to put a mask on because the amount of capsaicin in the air. Like we were tearing up, you could barely breathe. Like it was almost toxic. I mean, it was so hot.
You were probably already wearing masks.
Oh yeah, we were, but like now it's like, man, now I wish I had like an actual respirator. For sure. Wait, we lose Kirk?
I think Kirk froze there.
Oh, I think he's back.
Am I back? Am I stable?
Stable.
Are you sure you want to get into that?
No. Was all that heat pulled out right from the barrel, and you didn't add peppers to it? Is that?
So it was an unrinsed barrel. Basically, there was basically a bourbon barrel that was sent to a hot sauce company who then aged habanero mash in it, and then they basically sent that barrel to us to age Tupelo in it, and we didn't rinse it out. You know, there was still some mash inside, and so we just added honey, let it ride, and if you know, hindsight were foresight, we probably would have dumped more than mash. But it turned out really, really good. So I'm glad y'all like it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's the beginning of something interesting. It's a very limited run of barrel aged honeys that we're gonna do. Yeah, you'll see more of them. And so far, this one really, right, honestly, is only in store only. So I saved you guys a trip, even though you should still come back in.
I like the no label. Did you sell that out of your trunk in the back alley or something?
You got it. Yes. I don't know. Really wanted to show off the actual honey. And granted, after it's been sitting so much, you actually get all the pepper stuff kind of floating to the top. But it used to all just kind of be in suspension here. But, you know, it's just showing off the beauty of this glorious liquid substance here. It's sweet heat. And I'm not going to lie. I'm like so proud of myself. I wrote the poem in there. Literally the only poem I've ever written in my entire life that actually made sense. So I'm like, yay, good job, me. Tooting my own horn there. Oh man.
What's it called? The poet laureate. I think you're there. You're almost there, man.
Oh man. A couple more bottles of mead and I'll be there. All right. I think we should move on to this beautiful thing right here. So tell us about it, David.
Yeah, so the third of our product lines is the Reserve series. And these are the high-end, port-like, sherry-style meads. We typically age these anywhere from 5 to 10 years prior to release. This particular one is from 2011, and it's our Peach Reserve. And it's actually was the first opportunity I got to use. I forgot the honey that I used in this damn thing. No. God, that's so funny. Because there's a great story behind it, but it'd be better if I could remember what the honey. I suddenly blanked the name of the damn honey.
Meadowfoam.
Meadowfoam. Thank you.
Yeah.
Somebody knows what the hell I did. It's on the back. Oh, good for me. You think I would think to read that kind of stuff? Because usually, yeah, we don't. Most of our meads, we list what the honey is. But yeah, that Meadowfoam honey. For years, I would hit farmers markets just walking through, and I discovered, they would be selling some Meadowfoam honey. I always thought it was this most amazing honey. Vanilla notes, creaminess to it. And I'd always be like, oh, you know, can I get some bulk from you? And they're like, well, what do you mean by bulk? I'm like, oh, to use it in my reserve series, I would need like at least 300 pounds. And they're like, no. We got little jars. Nobody had 300 or more pounds of it. And I did an interview maybe a year later after I'd been bumping into meadow foam, really all over the country when I'd be traveling, with a Denver Post reporter. At the end, she's like, oh, is there honey out there you'd like to work with that you haven't worked with? So I started telling my meadow foam story. And literally like 3 months later, she calls me up. She's like, I found you your meadow foam. Because her sister lived in Oregon and happened to know a beekeeper up there and found me and hooked me up with some meadow foam honey. So it really is kind of a peaches and cream thing, even though that's kind of a trite, overused phrase of stuff. But the reserves are meant to be that post-dessert, after you've had your sweet, pair it out with some cheese and fruit. With the peach one, I think about things like brie and goat cheese and Havarti, you know, softer cheeses. We do some of like our red raspberry. I think of it with like stinky cheeses, blue cheese, Stinson, Gorgonzola, things like that. But these are meant to be that little sipper, end of your night. And I generally say about reserves, we make them because we can.
That's great.
Oh, this would be great with goat cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
some,
you.
Some high-end crackers, you know.
It's really good.
Yeah, it's amazing what age does. You know, just like it's smooth as silk. You know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you couldn't even tell me this is alcoholic until I
Super
finished the bottle.
peachy.
Yeah.
Huge body.
Yeah, I mean, just very well done.
Yeah, it's got some legs on it. It'll get up and walk away. And even though it's by far the sweetest thing we make, it's still not cloying. It's not, you don't sit there with your tongue feeling like you got coated. Even with that extra sweetness level, it still has that little hints of dryness out at the backside.
What's the ABV?
I think this one is running around 13.5. Yeah, so 13. I mean, they're not overly high in alcohol. Our reserves tend to be between 13 and 14.5.
I think that's just right for this mead. You know,
Yeah.
the 13 and 14. Yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful mead. It's delicious.
Well, we all know the troubles of going 14 and over.
Yeah. Reminds me of the mead that I made for my own wedding. I mean, it was modeled after razzmatazz, Kirk over there. Only I made mine about 19%, which it was originally for like the actual toast during the wedding. But I will say that the ceremony was beautiful, but the reception absolutely descended into darkness, both literally and figuratively. I mean, but I'm still married, so it worked out. But yeah, there's something about some deliciousness. I love it. Right on, y'all. So let's see. So what is the perfect mead fermentation time? Like, what have y'all found? I mean, obviously it's gonna depend on the type of yeast you use and what you're looking for, but what are y'all's preferences on like if you should be using a cultivated yeast or commercial yeast? And then like how often do y'all usually like to, like how long do you expect your ferment to go? I guess I could say.
It depends on what we're trying to do. I mean, our session meads compared to like a still mead, if we're doing like a 15 or 16% still mead, you expect it to go a little longer. But two weeks to 3 weeks, and I know there's a lot of different, everybody, this race to like the fastest fermentation time. That's not what we try to do. I mean, we try to keep it a cooler ferment, and cooler meaning right around 67 degrees, and not let it go up too high, and let it kind of go out, 3 weeks to where we're like done. And I'd say we're probably 3.5 with our stills, maybe a little longer. But then that being said, it depends on what you're trying to do. We did a oh, God bless, what strain? It was a Belgian, a Saison yeast strain that we used. And we have a walk-in cooler that we'll do some of our ferments in for smaller batches. And we had like a couple 150-gallon tanks and like 6 55-gallon drums of a Saison style mead that we did. And we actually put space heaters into the walk-in cooler and heated it up to 105 degrees inside the walk-in cooler and did like a high temp ferment. And that fermentation took like 4 days. So
Yeah, go figure.
It all depends on what you're trying to do, but yeah, that's our experience.
Is that bacterial on that in the cooler on the 105 degrees?
No, it was just getting it up to get like a lot of those esters and a lot of the really, spicy notes from the yeast. It was I forget what we called that. Apocalyptic farmhouse. So it was like a farmhouse Saison kind of style.
So
That sounds
farmhouse
pretty cool.
sometimes like wild. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sounds super cool.
I feel like it's behind me somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably in your collection.
Yeah, my wife is not pleased, but she'll be happy eventually.
Yeah, I think fermentation time, it depends what you're making and what your conditions are. The question, is it fermentation or is it kettle to shelf?
Just fermentation is what this person asked.
Yeah. All right. So for our nectars at 8%, typically 5 to 10 days. Shorter amount of time in the summer when it's warmer in the meadery. Little longer in the winter. The 12% is typically 14 to 21 days. Same variant depending on time of year.
And I'm guessing most of y'all use commercially or at least commercially made yeast just for quality control, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then
we're using commercial wine yeasts.
And then Kirk over there has got his little proprietary gem.
But we use a lot of Scott Labs yeast, and I've had 4 different winemakers with us, and we're all friends. They some of them move or whatever. Wife gets a job somewhere else, but I'm still in touch with them all, and they've all brought wine yeast, mostly through Scott Labs, and we've tried a lot of different things, and they all work pretty good, but some there's differences. So and it doesn't take that long, like the guys were saying. It goes pretty fast, but part of the wine making or mead making is once we run usually like 60 degrees, a little cooler, maybe 65, and we let it sit afterwards. We have enough tankage space. We can let it settle out, and then while we didn't talk filtration, but we do a lot of pad filtration with a crossover filter, a 40 pad unit, and run 2. It goes through 4 values of pad filters down to EKs. And then we run it through absolute filtration at what is it, 0.4 microns or whatever it is. It's 4 microns or something or other. But we get it really tight filtration, and we didn't talk about this much, but we always use sorbate and we always use sulfur. Always. And we haven't, and we've had a couple failures and re-fermentations. Another one recently, generally because it wasn't, we went through the filtration, but it didn't get the sorbate and the proper values, sorbate and sulfur. And it hasn't been a major disaster yet in cans and bottles, but generally it's small batch stuff that where the guys get a little lazy with. They think, we're just gonna, make a 15, 20, 6 barrels with this, and we're gonna run it through the front house. But then it gets pushed aside because of all the logistics of running so many products. Then it starts coming. The girls go, hey, it's coming out really foamy now. It's like, yeah, it's re-fermented and it's getting drier. So we want to make sure we never have to have a recall. It'll just kill us. And I've heard of another meadery, I don't want to say the name, that they've had a couple, and the distributor does not like it. You know, that people don't get their products, the reps aren't happy, yada, yada. So anyhow, that's a basic process we use.
We're on the sulfur and sorbate wagon with you, strong. We're firm believers in it as well, Kirk, and a very similar process. And we've unfortunately in 8 years have had to do, early on we had to pull back some product because of a referment. You know, you hate to do it, but it's obviously the right thing to do. But yeah, you don't want that stuff waking back up. It's bad.
You know, it sucks so bad.
No, it does. It does.
And on the flip side of the
David.
Yeah, I was just gonna say David definitely he doesn't add anything.
Yeah.
Right,
Cool.
and, you know, even with our yeast strains, I mean, when we, you know, first started out, you know, because I was homebrewing test batches, you know, shortly before opening Redstone, and I was mostly using ale yeast back then. I mean, I was still homebrewing a lot of beer, and that was, you know, more of my background. And you know, the first 2 7-barrel batches, I made identical batches. I put in the 1021 English ale yeast, which I always loved as a brewer, and thought, you know, and what I made a lot of the nectars with for home brewing. And I discovered this, you know, Narbonne yeast strain, typically good for young fruity wines. Pretty good description of our product. You know, and I did the batches. I did them side by side. I made them the same day. I pitched the same day. And the Narbonne both outperformed in terms of timeline, which was not the major factor. But, you know, I went down, you know, I was fortunate, you know, the Association of Brewers, now the Brewers Association, you know, was here local to Boulder. And, you know, I have a lot of friends working there, especially back then. I literally walked into the offices and walked from office to office going, which one? And almost unanimously, everybody pointed to the Narbonne. And it's just like, all right, well, I guess we're using the Narbonne. This is how I got a degree in English, too. You know, I had to declare a major. And they're like, well, what do you want to major in? I'm like, well, what do I have the most credits in? Oh, English major. That sounds great. You know, so that's, I guess, a general working theory in life of how I wind up with most things.
Yeah, we still use ale yeast on our session meads. And we use a clean fermenter, a West Coast ale yeast strain, and I mean it does good for us. And maybe it's a little, we don't. You always, maybe this is, I plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? And having a nice ale yeast that maxes out at maybe 9% ABV. I sleep a little more soundly at night, you know, that if something did wake up in the bottle, odds are, you know, we're already at 6, you know, it's not going to go too far. And it's just a little bit more, you don't want to plan for the worst, hope for the best, right?
No, I think that's fair.
We use wine yeasts, Scott Labs products, and for our still meads and some of our sessions that we've done. But infiltration's been a whole other fun thing to work through and figure out. But we finally, I'd say over the past 3.5 years, we use a cartridge filter. Plate and frame, as well as a cartridge. But you know, we do some pretty stupid stuff with our mead. We've added powdered cream cheese to our meads. We've added cocoa powder and all sorts of stupid stuff. And then you got to try to filter that back out. And needless to say, it's been a learning curve. But finding agents and filtration has been. I think we're there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
The brewery that I operate out of, one of the owners is good friends with the guys at UGA. And so he loves to go around, find yeast, isolates it from different places. And so they have a beer that they call Wild Azalea because it came from an azalea plant that was on the property. So they pulled the yeast from it. They send it to UGA, they clean it all up, and then they do test ferments. And so he loves that. He works with like the forestry department, and you know, they're going around the forest and they're scraping trees, and it's awesome. Like, I like to play around with it, but from a commercial standpoint, yeah, everything that we use is commercially purchased. You know, I don't have that much. Like the wild yeast will eat anything and go forever, and they're super strong. And I don't know that sulfites are going to shut them down. So I try and stick with the man-made stuff.
I think sour meads is a cool thing, and I know there's folks out there that play with it. Me personally, I'm still having a hard enough time to get people to just try regular mead. To try to convince them to try sour mead is like probably like 11th, that's like level 11,
Yeah, the only sour meads we've made are strictly made in the warehouse. They never enter the main facilities building.
Yeah.
Smart. Oh yeah. All right. Well, this one's delicious.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
sharing
great
that with
stuff,
us,
dude.
David.
All right, what are we up to next, Kenneth?
All right. Well, I'm gonna quickly do some shameless self-promotion. Let's see here. Oh, looks like my phone is frozen down there. So we can keep the reserve up, so that's good. But you guys got like 3 things from me. One of which is, of course, the body butter. I don't know if y'all have gotten to try this yet.
My wife has the one you sent, so she already confiscated that.
Good man. You're smart. Letting her have
That's
it.
funny. I had the same answer, Ken. My wife said it's good.
Awesome. Right on. Yeah, this one is our latest scent, Rosemary and Lavender. So great for a pandemic, easing your mind so we can all sleep well at night. But really awesome, amazing product. We use propolis and royal jelly in it. It's a shea butter based product. Definitely good for pampering yourself, pampering your wives. Just, maybe kindly ask them to rub your feet with it. But other than that, we've got the hand soap. This is probably one of my most favorite products that we sell here. And I love the stuff even before a pandemic. I mean, I just tell people now, you will enjoy it so much, you will sing happy birthday at least 3 times while washing your hands, because you'll just enjoy the scent of it. But a great one, definitely a wonderful hand soap. And of course the honey here that I sent you guys. Have y'all got to try the hand soap yet?
Soap's great.
Yes.
Not
It will
yet.
spoil you for hand soap, I'm telling you. So be careful when you use it. Never thought I'd ever say those words, but it's true.
I'm glad you. I shouldn't tell you this, but you sent that bottle, and I don't know if you recall, but I bought a bottle when I was down in June, and so my wife saw the second one, and she was like, "Oh, that's great."
Yes. Yeah, I honestly never put how good it was together until we ran out, and the company had we basically ran out as a company for a little while, and my wife went and bought like some dial soap, and it was just like, whoa, no,
Yeah.
I mean, whoa. Definitely not the same thing.
Yeah, we're enjoying the soap. We have it set up in the meadery restroom, so
Awesome.
it's getting good use.
Good. Yeah, I sent y'all my favorite one is the orange blossom one. I mean, it's just nothing like a little citrus while you're washing your hands. Beautiful. Right on. All right, well, let's drink some St. Ambrose.
Nice.
We might have to rush through them. I sent a few extra. I didn't know what I was supposed to send.
Yeah, you got us like 5 meads here.
We can just pop through them and what do you call it when you kind of power taste?
Power hour.
Which one are we starting with?
Yeah, what are we starting with?
What you got? I think I sent that mango habanero, exorciser. I sent let's try the Black Madonna. It's a sour.
That's sour.
What's the other one I sent?
John Lemon.
John Lemon.
Let's do the sour, and we'll jump to the lemon, then the mango, and then the exorciser.
So you're offering these in 4-packs now, aren't you? Like a little variety pack?
Yeah, we are. It's we have 8 or 9 SKUs in bottles with the draft meads. But we only did 4 SKUs of the cans because they'll kill me. They don't want to do it. We don't have room in the warehouse.
I didn't realize Black Madonna was a sour. That's great.
Oh,
Yeah, we got 2 of them. We got one we call Rasputin. It's raspberry sour.
And that this
We got our house culture.
so kettle sour. You're using
It
lactobacillus.
started out. Yeah, it's a lactobacillus, and once we started getting into it, I just read all about lactobacillus, and I got into microbiome in your
That's great.
gut. And it's just fascinating, the whole thing. It started out like my first sour was like in 2010. Well, we got it. We just got our license, and I had a batch that I had a professional winemaker too. He went to Michigan State, had his degree, helping me out, and it was getting like, it was tasting better all the time. And he goes, oh my God, this is delicious. We didn't know what was happening. And I took it to the Mazer Cup, and we took a gold with it. It was a higher ABV at the time. Am I still on with you guys?
yep.
You're all very still.
No, this is great, man.
Yeah, no, I love the
So-
flavors. Just a nice little pucker right in the middle of the cheeks.
It's
Like a
gorgeous.
nice big fruity finish.
It's crazy because you get like
So-
a peppery nose to it. I get pepper.
Yeah, kind of middle palate, upper, little peppery things. I agree with that. Yeah, this is delicious. Very, very drinkable.
It might be Brix of 6. It's not low, 5 or 6, but it's the sourness, the lacto acid, and the carbonation both drop, balance it out a little bit. We generally run all our drafts down to about 5 or 6 Brix. It's when we start dialing it, we'll taste it, and then we just turn on put the glycol to it and chill it down and stop it where we like it. Get it close. Now it started out. It's in the honey from the bees. You all know this, but the bee bread, the protein from the pollen, they coat it with honey, and there's lactobacillus in the flowers. They bring it back with the pollen, and it's on the bees. So the lacto fermentation creates lactic acid, and it lowers the pH of the pollen and preserves the pollen as bee bread, which is different than pollen collected from a trap on a beehive. So we didn't pre-sulfur this batch, and it's another thing. If you're using raw honey, and you're not sulfuring it in the front end, just to let it sit for a day or so, and knock out any bacteria. The best thing I'd recommend any mead maker is immediately pitch the yeast, a large amount, a decent amount, a proper pitch, and get that honey fermenting right away and get those yeast working. Because if you let it sit, warm honey with the warm water and the honey, there's natural bacteria will start working and could sour it. We sent it to what is it? One of the labs, the beer lab, and we had it isolated, and they keep it in the freezer, and we keep our cultures in 50-liter kegs, usually 6 to 8 of them, and I'll try to rotate those. So I got maybe 3 different batches of that house fermentation that have bacteria, and I keep the yeast out. I do not want yeast with my starter, so I just keep it corked off, and then we can pitch a couple of kegs into, like we generally are making this now in the 2,000 gallon tank, and we'll put like 1,500 gallons into it because it foams up. It's 1,600 gallons in it, and it's things. We're getting more confident of doing bigger batches.
Yeah, this is Black
Very,
Madonna is
very
delicious.
tasty.
It's great. The
Yeah.
acidity works really well with the sweetness. It's a nice little product.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely love
Which
this
one's
one.
next?
For a can.
Let's do John Lemon. We want to run through them real quick.
Yeah,
the draft.
we're at like an hour and a half now.
Yeah, we could go quicker. We could hit the John Lemon, which is pretty much, we want to pop those. Is that cool?
Let's do it.
Okay. That's pretty much a straight session mead with, we're using some lemon concentrate. Sometimes we still do a little, but we still use fresh lemons and fresh frozen juice. We think we get a little better product. We've tried the zest in it too. Parts a little bitterness. Yeah, it just depends.
Lemon can be tough.
Yeah.
How have you not gotten a cease and desist letter on this one yet?
Yeah, country time is going to be calling you soon.
What regards is that?
I don't know. Maybe an old famous musician played for a popular group in the 60s. I think there's another meter out there that named something similar and got a cease and desist letter from Yoko's lawyers.
Yours probably wasn't as good.
Right.
Awesome.
He tried to trademark this, and they do not like. When you try to trademark something, that's when you're on the radar.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's a lot of John Lemon beers out there I've seen over the years. It's quite prevalent.
Well, I think you also fall into the same land as Garbage Pail Kids, where there's satire clauses to the you can't be told not to do it because it's satire.
Right. I think the other meadery actually purposely tried to get a cease and desist letter from Yoko, though. That was actually the intent.
Nice.
So he could frame a letter from Yoko Ono saying basically, stop that.
Stop. That's awesome.
But no, I love the lemon notes in it, the citrus, just a little twang of lemoniness plays great with the honey.
Yeah, this is wonderful summer mead.
It's still about 5 or 6 bricks. It's up there. We use quite a bit of honey, and I'm just a little body, and I try to, like, if we're using a lot of honey, 5 or 6% decent. Try to bring enough acidity so it's not overly cloying. But a lot of people like sweet no matter what they say. They like a little sweetness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the balance in it.
Yeah, it's got a great balance. I mean, it's smooth. The finish is just very clean. Awesome.
Good.
We could move on to the Mango Habanero, which is our Grateful Head. We're borrowing again a little bit. At first, we had one pub that didn't want to carry it because they thought it had sexual ramifications. I never thought of it.
But at least you're grateful. I mean, come on.
Really, who would be, you know?
The nose on this is great.
Oh, wow.
The funny thing is, on that nose, it can make you sneeze or cough.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a little oil in the bubbles.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
It'd
great.
be like being a French gentleman, just give the little sniff and get a sneeze in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
This one's awesome.
So with this, are you
It's-
actually using apple juice, or are you just adding apples?
This is actually a sizer base.
Okay.
And this one. The other two are straight, more traditional honey and water. Yeah, this one we use a sizer base, so we get that nice acidity, and it's fermented with honey. Everything we do is fermented with honey, and then we take fresh habaneros, we cut them up in a bag, we throw them in the tank, and then we circulate a little now and then to spread that flavor out so you don't get skewed. You know, like sometimes it concentrates in a bubble.
Yeah. That's it's just the right amount of habanero too. I mean, I don't know if you've got this yet, Kirk, or if you guys have done pepper meads, but it's the one thing that I think is so, like, the range of, like, the sensory threshold for peppers amongst the general public is like
Yes.
I taste this and I'm like, oh man, that's just a nice little hint of pepper. And somebody else you could give this to and they'd be sweating profusely and be like, oh,
Yeah.
it's hilarious the range of what people think is hot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, that original pepper mead from, I never can pronounce it, from Africa. His pepper mead in the earliest days were like, blow your socks off. I
Yeah.
remember during one of the early international mead festivals, he served it there, and people were just walking around like, throughout the day. He toned it back. But I actually agree. I think the habanero is like just right there. Kind of comes late.
Yep.
And as you're sitting there after you've had a couple sips, and it lingers in that nice, like it heats up like just the right amount. So I like the balance of that.
One of my guys made a mead a couple years ago, and it was just so friggin' hot. You know, it just burned it. And I said, "You look, less is more." You know,
Yeah.
I like it. I like to feel the heat after 3 sips, and you get a little warmth, you know, in your throat.
Yep.
Ideally,
There's
people drink.
have you seen these because there's a sensation you get from these peppers that it's not heat, right? It like creates almost like a tingle in your palate that's hard to describe. At least that's the way it hits me sometimes. There's a vendor out there called Mark's Foods that sells these things called Szechuan buzz buttons. Have you ever heard of these?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like the Szechuan peppercorn?
It's they cause like a natural anesthesia, like it numbs your mouth.
Like an
And you can use them in cocktails and in beverages, and it's like this mouth numbing kind of thing it's natural, right? It's pretty wild. But yeah, I've not made a mead yet with it. It would be interesting if it didn't just dribble out of your mouth, right? They say it's like when you get your mouth anesthetized at the dentist or something, you know.
Right on. So we got the last one on the drafts is our exerciser, and it's our sweetest, but it is #1 in popularity. And my 2 guys that actually do, like David was saying, do most of the work now. They were after me. I mean, the last 2 or 3 years, like, we could use half as much honey and save all that money, and we could do this or we could do that. And I said, no. Talk to the hand. It's got a lot of body, and if it's #1, why would you mess with it? You know what I mean? It's like, so anyhow, it's the exerciser. We could pour that and we'd get through the sessions.
Great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, my screen's locked up except for myself, so I'm just hanging with.
Well, do you have it in gallery view still?
Yeah. Should I take it out?
Oh no, I mean, I don't know. Can you see everybody still, or is it?
Yeah,
So
I
Kenneth,
can,
is that your dog in the background wagging its tail?
Yeah. My wife just got home, and
I was about to say, you had it suddenly, it's like, wow, there must be a really happy dog in the other room. I kept seeing this tail like swinging back and forth.
yeah, you can see a little bit into the foyer right there. He's got like a little fan tail. He's an English.
This is a nice play of apples and honey. I mean, it's like we say about ours. I think sizers, even though we specialize in more medium dry styles, I do think sizers tend to like a little more sweetness to them as a general whole. I mean, our apple is probably the sweetest of the nectars we make. And I think it just lends to the category. And I think that's very proven here with what you made.
well, we'll add a couple barrels of honey to a tank to make this, and it's we had some honey in the front end, the ferment, and then we add more honey to it, and we add quite a bit of maple syrup to this one, and we use full-size cinnamon sticks, and put those in a bag and set them in there. So there is the maple syrup's real spendy, but you get some nice roasty bottom notes to it.
Yeah.
That and the spy apples too, particularly. I mean,
Yeah, we source. Go ahead, Kenneth.
I was just to say
Sorry.
it's a wonderful apple for what you're doing, the apple pie.
And we source the tartest apples we can find, and I'll tell you this: we our first batch we liked. We got a lab, so we run the TA on it, and it's about 8, a TA of 8. So if we don't have that TA of 8, we'll add malic acid and bring that back up. So we got a consistent, somewhat consistent flavor profile in each one.
Nice.
Well, yeah, this one right here is ever since Savannah Bee has sold mead and had a mead tasting room, this is consistently #1. And then there's nothing quite as American as apple pie, you know, and what better way to eat it than drink it, you know?
Yeah.
And I always tell people, add a little bourbon in there, you know, raise the efficiency level if you want, have like a little bourbon apple pie. So it's definitely a great one.
Well, we can finish off with the Royal Reserve, and that's when we do that's we ferment that out dry, more or less, and then we let it sit in the barrel for a couple of years if we can, maybe longer, if we have that potential. It's our highest rated mead. Exercisers will want it right up there, like on Untapped, which you guys probably look at that now and then. The Royal Reserve, as sweet as it is, has like a rating of, I don't know, 4 point blah blah whatever, but you know, just over it. But that's a good rating, you know. I mean, people really gotta like it.
Yep.
So we source brand new bourbon barrels for this mead out of Cuba, Missouri, and they're the #2 char, and we ferment it in the oak, and then we later on we add grape spirits, and we boost that alcohol up to 19%.
Wow.
And
So you had the grape.
yeah,
I was just gonna say,
Pardon?
you had the grape spirits after you've fermented in the barrel.
yeah. And actually, while it's even after the fermentation, we'll add the grape spirits and let it continue just sitting in the barrel, and then we add more honey to it. We add honey to it later, and let that age longer. So we'll put fresh star thistle honey on top of it, and it imparts some fruity notes to it, to my mind.
Man, Kirk, you got you can really, if you were to like take the bung off of a bourbon barrel and just you've really captured that right here. I mean, it's pretty great. You can get that wood grain and the bourbon, and that's good stuff, man.
Little vanilla,
Yeah.
little, you know, that butterscotchy toffee thing going on.
Yeah.
I think there's a honeysuckle, and I find it very reminiscent to dessert wines that have been infected by botrytis. Have you ever had, you know, these are grape wines that have a fungus that grow on the outside that almost like raisin the grape. And
We've made it.
I find that this has that very similar taste profile, and it's super pleasant. Like, this is well done. I'm a big fan.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it has a little bit of an ice wine quality. It has a sharpness to it that I actually really like because it keeps it from being particularly sweet in its finish and its profile, even though obviously there's more sweetness in general to it. So I like that little sharp twang right in the middle.
It is super sweet, isn't it? But I think the high alcohol helps with that. Just boost that alcohol up to where it's got that little edge to it.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly don't hurt.
That's some beautiful legs.
Yeah. Nice legs to it. I noticed that.
Yeah.
Thanks, you
that's
guys.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you for sharing this.
I'll be
So
right
that's-
back.
The way we're going through all these tastings, I can't wait to write some emails to my distributors after this.
Mm.
So we got some crafted stuff here. Yay.
Yeah.
Let's see, crafted.
So,
Yeah.
all right, so Kent, before we do the tasting,
Yeah.
what's up with the saw?
That's funny. I was waiting. I saw that after the Zoom started, and I was like, "Who's going to ask about that first?" That was my great grandfather's, and so I've just kept it in my various careers before I did this. It's just always lived in my office because I'm doing work, and so I just always kind of keep it as like a thing. And this is where
That's very cool. It's nice to have
Yeah.
those sentimental things that
Yeah.
kind of drive us forward.
Yep. And I actually was like it was a couple of years ago. I was building a fence in the backyard, and I just had to make a quick cut, and I didn't want to drag out like my circular saw, and I saw that sitting there, and I grabbed it up, and I realized how bad it sucked to use a handsaw, or at least
Hence
one
why it
that's
sits
like
on your whiteboard now.
right, at least one that's like 80 years old or whatever, So Bananas Foster Forever, Kenneth is pouring, and that is our. It's not the first session mead we made by any means, but it was one of the first, and it is our best seller. It always is. It's very sweet, over the top sweet. It's dessert though. Bananas Foster's dessert. It's funny because we use coffee in this, and so we don't really talk about that on the front label. But it was one of the, for me, the part of the fun of all this, and we do a lot of culinary inspired meads, dessert inspired meads, and it's like, okay, how do we recreate that flavor? We use the coffee to kind of help with that caramelization, the roasty kind of character of like that flambe when you'd have Bananas Foster. It's funny because while it's there in the nose, it's not there on the palate, for me at least. But we use wildflower honey, and it is sugar that we actually caramelize, and we put it in a pot, and actually a big old 15-gallon, it takes a couple batches to do it all, but we'll actually caramelize the sugar to help try to get that caramely note that you'd get from Bananas Foster. Lots of banana juice and vanilla bean, and then we use that. It's a rum flavored coffee bean, which
I think we might have lost him.
He's going back to research the recipe.
Yes, indeed. No, it's definitely a really, really awesome mead. It's like perfectly portraying the wonderful New Orleans classic of Bananas Foster. I mean, so many people that come in and taste this thing, they're like, wow, that's exactly like Bananas Foster.
Really unique, isn't it?
Yeah, without the fire though. And I tell people a little bit of 151 on top, little floater, just you can set it on fire like the traditional Bananas Foster dessert.
Kent's balanced vanilla bean really well. It's just buried in there nicely.
I actually think the coffee component to it is brilliant, right? So it's so subtle, but it really adds all these other things. And until you hear that there's coffee, I never would have thought that.
Never would have guessed it.
Yeah.
Right, it's one of those things that your nose is going, I know that, but you don't know what it is. And then suddenly someone goes, oh, we use low coffee. And you're like, it's coffee.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, it's dessert, Bananas Foster. You're going to have it with an after dinner coffee or an after dinner espresso. So it's actually kind of, that perfect pairing and flavor profiles.
Oh, yeah. It's even good with ice cream.
Really cool.
Would be good with ice cream or over ice cream.
Or soak French toast into it.
I once had a woman come in and she was getting more of my vanilla bean and cinnamon stick meat. She's like, oh, this goes great with French toast. It's just like, and I'm looking at her, and then she felt the need to explain, oh, I did a breakfast for dinner party. I'm like, you don't need to explain to me. I'm not sure, you can't drink all day unless you drink in the morning.
That's true. Oh, here he's back. He's back. Admit. All right.
I have to admit, you all made me have to find like some kind of opener so I could try you all's meads. I had to dig deep to find something to open stuff in the meadery.
Oh,
Got
I
the same
like
one.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Hey,
Don't
swing
like-
tops.
Russian bots don't like when you talk about what pressure your tank's at and
Yeah.
coffee.
Beans.
You'll have to wait to see the rerun of this to find out what we said about your mead.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's the Bananas Foster Forever. We do a couple variants of it. We do a strawberry. We're actually getting ready. I just ordered in the peanut. We use a peanut powder, but we do a peanut butter Bananas Foster Forever. That is, I prefer it over the others, but yeah.
Thanks for
The consensus in the group was that we liked your Bananas Foster Forever. We
Nice.
liked a lot of the notes. We like the coffee flavors. The banana comes through really, really nicely where you can tell it's banana without being completely in your face with it. So it's a lovely mead.
Thank you.
And
Did a good job with the vanilla. You know, it's like subtle or buried in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it, you know, it's you get there's two different people, you know, when you talk about vanilla being in something, they want to be like smacked across the face with it. And then there's the subtle, you know, approach. And I prefer the subtle on most things, you know.
Yeah.
Are you sure? It looks like this was in your
Well,
face stuff.
In this case, it's more in your face.
In your face.
So you guys, you that are fellow mead makers will appreciate this. Have you went through trying to label a pie mint before?
Oh gosh.
It's an absolute disaster. You can't talk about the grape varietal that's in the mead because it's a formula line, and so you can't mention the varietal of grape that's in it. But in the freeness of the Zoom call that we are on, I can tell you that this is Cabernet Sauvignon juice that we had purchased from a place called Presque Isle Wine Cellars, who they bring it in. They have an annual juice buy, and we fermented this with honey, and then we aged it in a bourbon barrel. And that is in your face pie mint. And the, you know, it pairs well. If you can't tell from the back label, it pairs well with, I forget what it says, Eddie Van Halen and
Yeah.
shoe tournaments or something.
Horseshoe
like
tournaments and lamb.
Yeah,
That's
there you go.
perfect.
Yes.
I like the twist of aging it then in the bourbon barrels. That adds like a whole nother layer of flavors.
Yeah.
And much different than really other pie mints that are out there because of that bourbon barrel aging. So that's,
I need
yeah,
to
that's
I
really
grabbed the
well
wrong
done.
bottle. I'm gonna go grab a bottle of it because I haven't had it in quite some time.
Yeah, it's got that cab richness.
Oh yeah. You get a little bit of the tannin from the barrel in there in the back end.
Kind of like little hint of blackberries, berries.
Yeah, it was for me because I don't come from a wine background, and it was an experience kind of looking into what the processes were to, you know, make a Cabernet Sauvignon and some of the enzymes and different things that you use to help bring out in the yeast strains to bring out that jammy berry quality and some leather and some of those things, you know. And it was the biggest challenge with this was trying to get that Cab Sauv kind of character to come across without blowing it out with honey and making it too sweet, you know.
Yeah, you did good.
Thank you.
You're really good. It's one of my favorite pie mints, you know, for the Cab Sauv. Yeah. It's got a huge body. Holy smokes. What do you think the Brix level is on this? Like,
I would have to go back and look. I really don't know. You know, towards the end, it was more of a finding the balance, you know, and this was a smaller batch for us. We do a lot of still meads like this in this kind of a format. is just one and dones. We'll do them and then we do something different. And so at any given time, I think we've got like 12 on the shelf right now. And so it was more of an exercise of like just getting it, just dialing it in, nudging it in, and getting it there. But I don't know what the final Brix ended up being.
You could turn around and serve this with a good steak.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And drink with a, just good piece of red meat would be excellent.
Yeah, we did have a question, like what meads pair well with foods, which is a very open-ended question. I mean, it really does vary depending on the mead and the food. But mead, it's an amazing accompaniment with food. And like you said, like any sort of red meat, phenomenal with, like a red piment, it's wonderful.
Yeah, this would be good with meat. It's steak.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Lamb specifically.
Oh,
Ooh, man, yeah.
I would agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's one of the things people don't realize, that mead is this wide-ranging beverage. And that's one of the things, we go back to what we were talking about early on, marketing and education and getting people to understand. So, we try to talk a lot about mead and food only because it gets people to start thinking, oh, mead is more than just something with dessert or with a turkey leg on a Friday night while wearing a pair of tights. Whether you're at a Renaissance festival or not, that's kind of your own personal business. But, that's the whole thing, is mead is wide-ranging. Beer is wide-ranging. Pilsner and stout are both beer, but that's the last thing they have in common. Prosecco and a big giant cab are both wine, but that's about the last thing they have in common. And mead is no different. Mead is that kind of a wide-ranging palate and lots of different flavor profiles. So pairing it with spicy food, with red meats, with fish, with cheeses, with pork, with lamb, with, depending on what you're doing. And I think that goes back to that marketing and education, is trying to get people to understand mead is not a singular beverage. Mead is a wide-ranging beverage.
Right. I think a question we get a lot is, when do I drink mead, right? And I always say, well, whenever you want to have a good time, right? Well, should I drink this with dinner or should I drink it for dessert? And it's like, well, there's a very flexible product, and there's so many different styles that it really is more real. It's not, it's just the term mead. It's difficult to encompass the category that it is underneath of that. And so often everybody rolls up to that term, right? But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. It's just that depth of bench that the category has is pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
yeah, this is great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this one. So we can just go around. What is your favorite mead that you make that you also sell? So just, what's your favorite one of all the stuff that you guys make? What's your number one?
Ginger. I like ginger session.
The ginger?
And it's not our biggest seller. I've studied the soda market, and there's always a ginger in there, Schweppes or Verner's or Canada Dry. But it's never number one, but man, I sure like it.
Right on. And the ginger one's great. Did you talk about wild ginger?
Yeah. Which we ferment it on medium plus oak.
Yeah, you add the oak now. That's awesome.
I like it. I like to up the oak. I'm looking for that vanilla, that like marshmallowy vanilla flavor. Like Verner's was renowned for the guy put his ginger ale in barrels, went off to war and came back, and voila, it's Verner's.
Yeah.
All right.
How about you guys?
Yeah.
For us, it's tough. I'm a big, when you work in the pizza shop, it's hard to go home and eat pizza every night. You know what I mean?
No, I don't get it.
But I honestly, the piment is great because it's so different than all the other meads that we make. It's got that red wine character. It's refreshing coming back to something like that after, the meads, there's similarities, right? And that's a pretty sharp contrast to a lot of the other stuff that we do. A style though that's a favorite of mine that we kind of brought back an iteration of just recently is strawberry and basil. I feel like it's such an awesome flavor combination, and you get that basil kind of, you know, I can't think of the word.
Earthy kind of.
Yeah, it adds a different character that is so complementary to that fruit.
Yeah, one. I always wondered about basil. I mean, how did you dream that up? How did you channel that up?
So it's cheating, but there's a book out there called The Flavor Thesaurus, and if you've never seen it, get it and look it up. It's an awesome food pairing guide. I like to cook, and so I use it in the kitchen, but it's a great book of taking, you know, this flavor and what goes well with it, right? And I came across it, I think, on like a home brewing forum or something. And it's a great reference book to just kind of be like, hey, like, you know, blueberry pairs with this, and pears pair with cardamom, and different things like that, right? And it's a great reference. But yeah, that's where I totally yanked it out of there.
It's called the Food Thesaurus.
Yep.
Check it out.
Right. There. Boom.
All right.
Look at that.
Oh, that's awesome.
The Inner Sanctum Secrets of Kent.
Indeed.
I've honestly pulled from it like 5 or 6 different times, but it is, when you're looking at building flavors, it's a really good, like, what kind of spices go well with the fruit. It's a good tool.
Cool.
Yeah.
The
There you
Flavor
go.
Bible is a similar type of thing, and it
Yep.
helps you kind of figure out what's going on in that flavor and how to pair it with things.
Nice.
But like, I'll check out your Flavor Thesaurus, but I would like to raise you thesaurus and take you to the Flavor
The
Bible.
Bible holds a higher place than a thesaurus. I don't know. I mean, this is tough. I mean,
It's like, whoa.
Being monks meadery, we like all things a little religious. And
yeah, right. Nice.
yeah.
So how
Is there a
about you,
dictionary?
David?
Any
Justin?
flavor dictionaries out there?
What about it, David?
My favorite mead?
Yeah, or style.
Whichever one I'm drinking at the time.
Yeah, right on. Oh, I like that.
Hey.
But I mean, but it's a kind of a true statement, because people, you know, obviously we all get that question. Well, what's your favorite?
Yeah.
You know, not to be outdone by, you know what you should do,
Yeah.
that type of line. But I really do, you know, there is an extent that is like, my favorite one is the one I'm drinking. But, you know, all of our recipes are my recipes. They're based off of my personal palate. So I tend to love everything we make for different reasons and different times. So, you know, I don't want the same mead all the time. I don't want the same beer. I don't want the same tequila. I don't want the same wine. I don't want the, you know, so I love mixing it up. But if I get wind up back with one or the other, you know, our black raspberry nectar, I mean, it's the first mead we put out commercially. It's our flagship. You know, if I pick one, especially in the nectars, which I drink the most of just because they're lighter, so it's a little easier to be drinking them when you're out drinking. I love the black raspberry. I always have. There's a reason I started the company on it.
Sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great mead too.
Thank you.
All right, Justin.
Justin, what's yours?
So, you know, at the house, the Stigmata, the floral one we tasted earlier, that's something that's on tap at my house almost all the time. When I'm in the mood for a beer, the abstinence is something that I gravitate towards. And then the new Dragon Nectar, you know, just, again, 6% alcohol. It's easy to drink. It's just nice. It's packed in a can, transports well. It's, you know, David, I like whatever's in my glass, but, you know, those are some of my favorites for time and place.
Hey, Kenneth, let's make you choose. Which of our meads do you like best?
Oh, wow. I don't have a big enough glass because I'll pour them all into one.
A doggy bottle of mead?
Yes, it'll be like the suicide mead, you know, you go down the line. No, I mean,
I believe that's called an infinity bottle.
infinity
Right.
bottle. Oh man, we need to get on that. But no, I mean, I honestly, I love them all. Like it's hard for me to choose. It really is. They definitely are fantastic. I mean, if I had to absolutely pick one, I mean, I do really love sweet tarts. So you can probably guess, which is, you know, this one right here.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, I don't know, but they all are so incredible in their own way, and they all are so unique and just absolutely delicious, and they make us happy and enjoy life, and that's ultimately the most important thing. So thank you guys so very much for sharing all this. Definitely appreciate you guys taking the time, sending these bottles out to everybody. This has been great.
So I think
doubt.
I need to plan on making it to Dragon Con next year. I didn't even know Dragon Con was a thing until you told me about it, Kenneth. And I think I'm going to have to get down to Savannah for 2021 Dragon Con.
You should. I think we're all going to be hanging out with Justin. We're going to just stay at his house.
Do it. Do it.
Thank you, Kenneth, for putting this together, like hanging out with the icons of the mead world. It's been awesome just talking with you guys. Thank you so much for sharing, you know, your secrets, Kent, like with your secret book, Bible.
That's on back. No, and Kenneth, thanks for putting it together. And then, I mean, thank you, Savannah Bee. Like, you are my surrogate tasting room that's in multiple places all the time. And like what you guys do, I think, for the mead world is introduce the category. You're helping with the education, and you're showing people what it can be. And I think what we saw here today was 4 different producers that do different things, and like nothing that we tasted today was the same. A lot of amazing flavors and unique style, and this was fun. Like,
yeah,
I've learned a lot. I'm definitely gonna get the Flavor Thesaurus, and you know, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
Kenneth, if I can just comment on that too, man. And I'm sure these guys can all attest to the same thing. But partnering up with you guys at Savannah Bee has been, if you look at the past 4 years, I think it is now, you guys have got a great reach because of the footprint of your locations and the tasting room experience, the sampling experience you provide for customers. We had a local radio station what's the guy's name? Rover Radio. Rover's Morning Glory was on the road, and he happened to be down in Savannah and was in at the Savannah Bee location. And they were talking about it on Cleveland radio about drinking crafted mead at Savannah Bee. And the funny thing is they had no idea that we were even local to the market here, right? But I think it's a testament to, and I don't think a week goes by that we have people that come in that have had our mead that are from 15 minutes down the road for the first time in Savannah, Georgia, or Atlanta, or Charleston. And I think it's symbolic of the reach that you guys have and how much you guys are doing to advance meat awareness out there. It's an awesome thing. So, I mean, kudos to you guys. And, you know, obviously you guys are great partners for all of us. But you guys are doing the Lord's work, reference the Bible, the Flavor Bible. But you guys are doing great stuff. So cheers.
All right. No, and I agree with Kent thoroughly. And there's been a lot of fun because, you know, when you start to talk with other mead makers, you know, there's always something new to learn. There's always a new idea to get from what other people are doing. And this has been very fascinating, and getting an opportunity because, you know, we get sometimes cocooned into our own little bubbles. We're out traveling, we're out promoting our products. So it's nice to get exposure to other mead makers in other parts of the country and hear what you're doing and your thought concepts. And Kenneth, I certainly appreciate you bringing us together. But I agree with you, Ken. I mean, Savannah Bee has been wonderful for the mead industry. As a whole, across the board, the experience that you provide people in the tastings, and not just the tastings, but, you know, I've done promos in several of your stores over the years. The people you hire are warm, They're passionate about learning about the mead and talking about it. They're not just salespeople or just like, oh, here, yeah, try this, that. They believe in what they're selling. And I think, what you've done, Ted, the owner of Savannah Bee, has put a huge commitment into our industry, and it shows in so many ways across the board. And we are thankful to have companies like you out there and other meaderies who we're all promoting, we're all learning, we're all trying to push that rock back up the hill, type of thing. And I think that's important. And really, just to kind of leave with one last note, I'm sure everybody wants that last word, but I want to kind of look at everybody with with Dragon Con and leave you with this message. I'm Batman.
I love it.
I'd like to make a comment on the origins of Savannah Bee and Ted. And it started with the honeybees. I mean, he's fascinated, and bees are fascinating. It's romanticized, but it's 90% hard work and sweat. But it started with the honeybees and the honey, and then it morphed into the mead. And putting that story together, people are even more fascinated and curious because of the honeybees and the honey, and then they try the mead, and it just all works together. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it really is awesome. I mean, just the whole concept behind what Ted's created with Savannah Bee is we're just trying to be ambassadors of honeybees, and we're trying to just show the public what all honeybees offer. And we started with honey, then we went to body care, and then now, of course, mead. But I mean, our mead experience would be nothing without what you guys create. So, y'all are doing amazing work. Y'all are the ones that really are progressing mead. We're just helping with the educational side of it. And all of this together, it just only helps our agricultural system, and it helps our beekeepers. It helps us all survive and eat food, ultimately. So, thank you guys for continuing to push the notch on mead just a little bit, step higher and higher, with all the things that you guys are making. Yeah, I mean, it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. It really is.
Well, I gotta call my wife now to get her ride home.
Nice.
Awesome.
Not really.
Here's the Savannah Bee, and here's to you guys. Keep making the good mead.
Cheers, guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for showing up. This is great.
Yep.
Cheers, all y'all.
Cheers.
Thank you guys so much for coming out, and we'll have to do something again similar to this in the future.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you guys.
Yep.
Bye, y'all.